holy brothers, we're continuing to learn the Aliya Nishmas Bas Yafega Bas Yisrael, Frida Simon Bas Yitzchak, Meir Yitzchak Ben Yosef Aliya Koren, and for the Refuah Shleima of Hillel Tzvi Yehuda, the Merkin families, Hagdasha for their son. The week is sponsored anonymously by a grateful family in our community. Let's delve right into it. In the pages that you have in front of you, on Daf Kuf, we began this beautiful, I love this, I partially love this. We began this gorgeous piece the other day that was speaking about the type of Aliyah we dream about. Ben, do you need pages? Surely you need pages? I have. Yeah. Okay. We began this gorgeous concept speaking about in the spheres that we've been doing. We got to the sphere of Netzach. We spoke about Netzach having 3 different ways of interpretation. Netzach meaning eternity, Netzach being victorious, and Netzach being Lamanatseach, orchestrating. The last thing we learned was how much we need someone that, a manhig, a real manhig, that can orchestrate Aliyah Hamonit. Shachar Tatzarich? That can orchestrate a mass Aliyah in levels we have yet to see in our generation, because that type of a leader has within him the qualities of eternity and victorious, and he's not scared of any bumps on the way, of any obstacles, because he knows he has this inner, we didn't speak too much about that type of a manhig that can do this, type of leader that can do this, but he has these qualities inside of him, and thus making him an orchestrator, a conductor of sorts. Now we're going to be continuing from the 3rd paragraph. Beseder ha-sfirot kodemet ha-tiferet la-netzach. Again, with the sfirot chesed, gvura, tiferet, netzach. And then we'll continue afterwards. Before the sfira of netzach, we had tiferet. Tiferet, we said, was how the Torah, represented the Torah, how the country is longing in its pnimius for it to be a Torah, again, saying the words Medina Talacha is not is not the pnimius of it. It just means that the way that this country is being run and representing itself in the world is imbued through Torah and the judicial system, specifically the judicial system, how it should be a Torah judicial system. Tiferet, that's the midah of Tiferet. That has to come before Netzach, Aliyah, in our context. Why? Kevan shekabbalas haTorah shebahar Sinai al yedei Moshe Rabbeinu kadma laknisa la'aretz. Because Moshe Rabbeinu's whole inyan, the midah of Tiferet in this context of Torah, came before we went into Eretz Yisrael. According to this, the way it seems it should be set up is that what comes first, Aliyah or setting up a system here of Torah? Setting up a system. It seems like that, nachon? The only thing is you can't set up a system of Torah here unless you're here. So it's a little bit of a kind of. What I want to say, and he doesn't go deep into this over here, is that it must be that the way that you come into Eretz Yisrael is already with that mindset of, oh, this is Torah headquarters. It's happening here through the Torah. From the second that I get here. Ken?
We've spoken to a certain degree about that. It's almost like it's not, I'm coming here because we created ways and the cherry tomato and whatever it may be. What's the mentality that we're coming in with? And if I could be completely honest about myself and my family, it wasn't necessarily that machshava. It was, I gotta come home. That was for me. And then once I got here, I was like, okay, it's big. It's bigger than that.
Right.
So,
Yefeh. Ashrechem. Omnam. However, nitan ledamot et aliyah la'aretz la'aliyah laTorah shel chatan lifnei chatunato. You can liken aliyah to an ofruf. How do you say ofruf in Shabbat Chatan? Slicha. No, but Shabbat Chatan by you is the Shabbos after. It's not that. You don't have an ofruf. No, an ofruf is dafka the Shabbos before. That's what he's saying over here. The whole Indian is before. Okay. Aliyah zo. 4th line, חבר'ה. עלייה זו מהווה אצל החתן הכנה לחיים בהם מממשים בפועל את עיקר מצוות התורה, This Aliya for the Chassan represents before him a whole world of preparing to go into a world where you're actually living the Ikar Mitzvah Torah, which is, obviously building a family, Puruvu. It's representing how basically everything until getting married is kind of just a hachana for what you're supposed to be in the world. I'll tell you a Gewalt Ishbitz Torah that comes to mind right now. This is so beautiful. The Me'ashilach says that there's a very interesting bracha that we say under the chuppah that really you should say at birth. Does anyone know which one? What bracha makes sense that you should say at birth? Asher Yotzer Adam or Asher Yatzaret Adam B'Tzalmo. Blessed are you, God, that you created man, or that you created man in his image. Ishbitzer says in Parashat Bereshit, it would make much more sense that bracha was either said at a bris or at giving the name of a girl. That would make much more sense. You're talking about the creation of man. It's very much over here in the lines of over here. He says a beautiful Torah that until you get married, you're not doing anything really godly in the world, because what God did was that he took basically yesh me'ayin, right? Until you create something that you create one out of two, which is what we hopefully try to do with a marriage, you're not really fully under the element of betzalmo, in God's image. You understand? Mm-hmm. It's a very deep concept. So I want to say now like this. It's the same thing regarding being a Yid your whole life until you come to Eretz Yisrael. The same level. There's this yesh me'ayin, there's this bittelness, there's this like ex nihilo, there's like you come to a state of being where it's like you realize you really are not in charge. Like you always say, no, we're not in charge. You sound very frum. But then you come here and you're like, oh, that's not just like a nice statement. That's like, oh boy, that's actually the Metziut here. That's actually how it really goes over here. And that's why he likens it to like an ofruf, to a Shabbos Chassan. It's like, yeah, you have no idea what you're getting into. It's a beautiful thing, but you don't understand. Not in a cynical way, Chalila. This is a new world we're entering into. And everything up until now was just a preparation. Kach al ha'oleh la'aretz la'alot elea mitoch toda'a shel chatan. The person that's coming home, he has to be in the perspective of a chassan, of a groom. She'omed lavo el artzo kalato. That's about to come to his country, to his land, / his kala. Now we learned this when we were learning about the midah of chesed. Like he says over here, כפי שהערכנו לבאר בפרק ח', פרק החסד, שהוא שורש הנצח, כדלקמן, אודות יחסי עם ישראל וארץ ישראל. We learned over there in the chapter speaking about love, that our relationship to the land is like a zivug. Do you remember this? We were learning that it's like a zivug. It's like a soulmates. You have to treat the union that happens between you and the land like a union between a chassan and a kala. And where the chassan and the land is our kala, and the whole point is to have intimacy, and to have shmirah, and to have protection, and just to have some element of bliss going through it. These are not the pages.
If I remember correctly, in that paragraph, there was even talk about doing some pu'ulah in the land.
So b'diuk. So he says, when you do a pi'ulah in the land, when you work the land, very good, Steve. When you work the land, and you're drawing out of the actual land, life and sprouting forth, he likens that to intimacy as well. So he says over here, a chassan going up to the Torah is about to get married. Us coming to Eretz Yisrael has got to be with the toda'ah of a chatan that's about to embark right now on something intimate, real, deep, and completely new. Meaning, I'm jumping ahead, your Yiddishkeit, when you come to Eretz Yisrael, has got to be completely new, because it's a new world of understanding what it means to be in a relationship with Hashem. Something completely new. Because most of us, if not all of us in here, are olim in the last, besides Steve, in the last 10 years, let's say. I don't know, you're a bit longer also, right? 12. So we have this concept that we know what this is like. We know what this is like. We very much do. And I'm interested in creating the foundation of this relationship on the pillars of Torah. The Torah was given to us that we shall fulfill it in Eretz Yisrael. He says the Torah itself renews its face when it comes to an actualizing, being fully actualized in Eretz Yisrael. The Torah itself. En Torah ke Torat Eretz Yisrael, like we know, Chazal say. Al ha'oleh la'aretz lachush. So the one that's coming to the land and moving here, they must sense ki kasher hu nichnas leplatlin shel melech. That when you're going into the platlin, how do you say this? The castle of the king, alav leosif od ve'od b'kiyum haTorah v'mitzvos b'shlemus u'b'hiddur. You have to come with the consciousness of saying, I'm going into the inner chamber of the king. In the inner chamber of the king, you act differently. You act different. What may have been 100% great and perfect outside the chamber of the king is not the same zah. It's not the same thing when you're in the chamber of the king. This is a very important nekuda. To go back to what Yosef was saying a little bit, I spoke about this with him. One of my heroes is Rabbi Josh Yoshua Fass. You know him? Mm-hmm. He doesn't know that he's really one of my heroes, but we're old friends for mamash many years. He runs Nefesh B'Nefesh. So many of you do know him. You know of him. Matthew, you met him before? So
love him.
He's brilliant. He's so
Brilliant.
humble that you wouldn't know that.
He's like a super strategist.
The founder of Nefesh B'Nefesh.
He's brilliant. He's heart. He's mamish heart. There was one ad that I once saw. I never got to discuss it with him yet. That Nefesh B'Nefesh put out, where it basically showed that, I know, basically talking to the clientele of potential Aliyah makers and saying, I forget, this was years ago. You could shop here. We have everything here. Don't worry. Kilu, the machshava of the ad was more saying, like, on the level of, you could still get what you need even here, because back in the day it wasn't like that. Like I told you guys, my father first traveled back on our first trip after Aliya in September of '89, and he brought back Heinz. That was a big, big deal. That was a big deal. It really was. Maybe today the comfort of like Alexa, what's her name? Alexa? Right, those inyanim are not yet. What's Alexa? It's not, Alexa wouldn't stem here. It's not an Israeli thing. But all the level of instant here maybe doesn't exist like it is, in Chutz La'aretz. It's not meant to be a place where, hey, look, everything could be as comfortable as it could be in Chutz La'aretz. That's not, even if it is, that's not the point.
But it's not supposed to be.
Saying even if it is, I don't know what it's. Lav dafka. Yeah, but after you buy the Yisurim, it could be like that.
But no, once you accept the fact that you have the Yisurim, at that point, you might be able to then understand that, okay, I've accepted the fact that that's the way it's supposed to be. Mitmodedim zeh, and I'm happy with the fact that I have it, because I know that this is part of my growth process.
I hear the kav machshava, but it's not. But like Steve said, lav dafka. It's not mukhrach hametziyut.
What do you want the focus to be?
Yeah,
Separating from family overseas.
B'diuk. It doesn't have to be. It's
It's
different.
not a life of suffering. It's a process.
Right. But that's what he's saying. There's some kind of tfisa you have to go through here, that it's supposed to be, like you have to go through something really hard and painful to earn it. That's the Torah is the same way. Nachon. Okay, I don't want to get stuck on here. I just want to repeat this last sentence. Rav Ginsburg saying, if I come to Eretz Yisrael with that consciousness, so I'm going into the inner chamber of the king. In the inner chamber of the king, before I go in there, I comb my hair. I make sure I'm clean. I try to see what else I could do in the chamber of the king to make myself be ra'ui, which is a word we've been using a lot this year. Ra'ui means worthy in this context. Like in every levaya, in every funeral of any soldier, every eulogy has the language of, we should be re'uyim to live here in the merit of your korban, of your hakrava. This language of worthiness is very strong. The Yiddish terminology of worthy means over here that my consciousness is one that I'm here because I know now the Torah for me is something much bigger and much more. It's got to be much more beautiful. You got to beautify it. This is in the chamber of the king. Weiter. Baruch Hashem. Now he addresses very tachlis things, very important things. Very important things. Not that anything wasn't unimportant, I'm just saying now it's like, check this out. Baruch Hashem, בשנים האחרונות, זכינו להיות עדים לעלייה המונית מרוסיה. In recent history, we are privileged to be witnessing a mass Aliyah from Russia. אך עדיין, אנו מחכים לזרם סוחף. We're still waiting for an overcoming, like a flow, as סוחף, though, like a...
Consistent.
Huh? Like a torrent? Zerem is a torrent. Sochef means that you're taken by influx of Aliya me'aratzot acherot batfutzot, from other countries in the diaspora. Next page, ubeikar me'aratzot harevacha hama'araviyot. You know what that means?
From the West, United States.
From Target land, from the places. You know, we're still waiting. It's like, understand, to leave Russia, the hard thing about leaving Russia is that, hey Moshe, the hard thing about leaving Russia is that it's just comfort zone. Why? Because you're comfortable with what you know, right? You're comfortable with like what you know. Now listen to this. This is a deep Indian. I told you guys, my family's from Buenos Aires. My father's family's from Buenos Aires. Life is not good there. It's not a good life. It's not like there's elites. It's not, for the Jewish community, it's not like a really good thing. They had this crazy bombing. When was it? In 94, right? And the embassy there. My father grew up, my father's parents, you know, after they left Poland in 47, 48, to move to Argentina, they moved, you know, there were a bunch of Nazis also on the boat. Right? My father grew up with Nazis, mamish Nazis and their children in the streets of Buenos Aires, and they would, you know, spit at him and curse at him and wait for him in street corners. This was happening all over the place in South America, late 40s and early 50s. Not just in Argentina, also in Brazil. I wonder if also Uruguay. I think also in Uruguay as well. In any event, my father had the greatest gift in the world of his parents sending him and moving him to Israel on his own when he was 14, on what's called Aliyat HaNor. That was a whole movement of the youth Aliyah, where they took a bunch of kids from different countries, Jewish kids. Their parents knew they would have a better future in Eretz Yisrael, and they sent him here, and they moved here when he was 14. The plan was the parents were going to follow, but my grandfather died that year, my namesake, right? So they never ended up coming. So my grandmother, Aliya Shalom, and my uncle, Aliya Shalom, stayed in Argentina. On one of the trips when I was with my father in Buenos Aires, and I saw, like, wow, it's like really, it's Nebuch here. It's not good. It wasn't, I'm sure they're beautiful places, you know. But as a Yid, and I couldn't understand how my grandmother stayed there, and my uncle never left, and his children never left. And it's clear, it was very clear to me, it was the first lesson of, like, people would rather be in very shvach and very unpleasant surroundings if that's what they know of, versus the unknown, even if it could be way more comfortable. And that's mamash how the Yid begins his journey. It's exactly that. It's exactly that. That's why the lashon, the language of Lech Lecha, speaks about, like, this place may be the best place in the world, but I know that for you to be open to it, you got to be okay with parting from what you know of. And what you know of was pretty not good either. Avram Avinu wasn't flying high in his society in terms of like what was going on back then. But the whole inyan is to rip someone away from what they know into the unknown, goes against basic tendencies of humanity, of just our nature. Yeah.
psychologically it is very easy to explain, because given that there is no security anywhere, the best we can do is create a feeling of security.
Right.
And the familiar
Right.
creates
Right.
that feeling of security, even if it's not good.
Mamash. Wow, that's so strong. Nachon. That's exactly it.
Yeah, but that's how we can explain that there are people who were in prison and they finally got out. They do everything to get back into prison.
Right. Because that's what
there
they know.
how
That's
life
what they know.
goes.
That's what they know. Mamash kacha.
And that is one of these enormously impressive things about Eretz Israel.
Yeah.
It's not an issue that the land gives us a sense of security.
Right. Right.
Exactly what
It's exactly what he's talking about. It's interesting that he's noting here is like if you look at what was the mass Aliyah that took place then, so he's speaking about Russia. How many, well, I'm not going to say Russian Jews, I'm going to say how many Russians moved here, because many of them are not Yidden. But how many Jews, let's say, made Aliyah during that period? But does anyone know the number?
It was like 1 million people came.
Over 1 million, yeah?
Not necessarily Russian. Not necessarily Jewish,
But there was
1
like
million Russians came.
crazy. So he's saying we're still waiting for the chevra that don't feel like it would be better here to make Aliyah. You understand? He's saying we're still waiting for the folks that like. But he's gonna do a big kav schus in a second. It's things we speak about. He's gonna judge favorably in a second. We're still waiting for the countries where it works and their life works over there.
I was driving someone around on I think Monday, and he was here visiting, and I was showing him some beautiful nature here in Eretz Yisrael, and he's like, "Wow, it's amazing!" And it was like so new. So he said, because Trump got elected, it's more of a negative thing, meaning it's detrimental to Aliyah. And people felt
I've heard
a certain way.
I've heard that too.
And that's that same thing of the comfort thing.
I've heard that a
and
lot.
the safety
And
thing.
friends literally tell you, okay, I don't have to move now.
Right, I've heard that.
Like,
I don't have to move
I don't
now.
have to move. I don't have to move now.
I'm dying low.
Running from, running to.
As you have taught us in previous, there's the concept of running from.
Bidiyuk,
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
The neshama needs to be primed
Yeah.
to understand that we are going to some place, not running away from a
Tell you why, that's why Matthew, don't kill me. There was a corner in my heart was davening for Skamala to win because I thought that would cause, I know. just don't worry, it was just a he's gonna kill me.
You just wanted to hear that demonic cackle.
Now look what he says here. Now he's basically, what the Rav is saying here, what is it that we're actually longing for? Anu miyachalim letzionut amitit. This talks to me, to my deepest depths of my kishkas. It's stuff I talk to you guys about all the time. We are longing for real Zionism. You know, Rav Shlomo got up, Lincoln Square Synagogue, 1987, where he gave over that piece that we learned last year about what does it mean to be a Jew after the Holocaust. And he got up and he said, Chevra, I'm not talking about modern Zionism. Because he said the word Zionism. He's like, wait, he said, Chevra, I'm not talking about modern Zionism. He screamed. He said, I'm talking about Avram Avinu Zionism. He's saying, I'm talking about B'techazena Yineinu B'shuvcha L'Tzion, B'rachmim Zionism. Rav Ginsburg is saying, what are we really longing for? Tzionut Amitit, real emesdik, pnimius, inside Zionism. And how does it get expressed? How do I know if this is like real emesdik Zionism? Hamitbatet ba'aliyah mitoch hashra'a meshichit l'shivat Zion shel mamash. An aliyah, that's being expressed through means of messianic inspiration. I come here, I move here, not because it's the right thing to do, not because I can get Heinz now, not because not because it stinks there, wherever I am. Ideally, I come here from a place that's emanating from Messianic inspiration. A word we keep on seeing how the world is terrified from. Now, don't just think that he's speaking about a person that has to make a choice to leave Chutz La'aretz and come here or not. He's also speaking about all those of us that wake up here in the morning and have been living here for 5, 10, 50 years and say, today do you want to make Aliyah that's emanating from Hashra'a Meshichit? From Messianic inspiration? That's the Bechira, that's the choice that each of us can make every day that we're here. Every day that we're here, we can make that choice. Ha'im ani hayom ole la'aretz mitoch hashra'a meshichit o lo? Is my day today going to be one that can fall under the category of saying, this was a messianically inspired day? That's how we have. That's the mochin. That's the netzach that we're speaking about over here. Remember, there was a chassid of Rabbeinu HaKodesh, of Rabbi Nachman. This tzaddik was geshechted by the Germans. His name was Rabbi Yitzchak Breiter. Rabbi Yitzchak Breiter wrote a sefer, which is basically Seder Hayom Shel Chassid Breslov. He basically wrote like a Shulchan Aruch, if you will, according to Rabbi Nachman's teachings on how to live a life in the day of a Breslover chassid. And one of the first things he writes in there is that every Jew has to ask himself every single day, how badly do I want to be in Eretz Yisrael? Now, you may think that that's like guidelines for the diaspora Jew in order to feel better or to connect himself to one day making Aliyah. Because he says that basically when you ask yourself that question in the morning, where's my ratzon? Where's my will? Does it really want to be in Eretz Yisrael? How much do I want to be in Eretz Yisrael? He says if that's what you're dealing with in the first thing in the morning, that sets the tone for the day and it aligns yourself with the inner core of your soul. But I want to say that is not just a question at all for someone that's not here. That's a question for you and I that are here. That I wake up in the morning and I say, how badly do I really want to be here today? And I plug into that, then my day becomes Hashra'a Meshichit. Then my day gets aligned with Messianic inspiration. And that's very, very important to acknowledge for those of us that have been blessed with this matnas chinam of having the privilege of living here. To ask, to be aligned with that question, it aligns us completely with our whole existence. Second line, the end of the second line, Aliyah kazu, kamur lemala, this type of Aliyah, tluya betikun chelkei hakodma hakodmim. It's dependent, in order to make Aliyah like this, it's dependent on how we set up shop in this sefer. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, through everything we've spoken about until now. You can't just wake up in the morning and say, I just want to be here messianically inspired. Where's the Chesed? Where's the Gvura? How's Tiferet coming out? Where's your Netzach? And we'll see. Hod Yisod Malchus. Ubifrat betikun aguf shel Am Yisrael be'eretz Yisrael, tikun ma'arechet hamishpat. And he goes back again and he says, and again, this type of Aliyah cannot take place if the judicial system is still messed up the way that it is. It won't. It's one of the weirdest things that people don't understand. Then when you understand it, you're like, oh yeah. Our problem in here, it's not really in what you see in the Knesset. The real issues here is not the Knesset. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. I think you agree with me. I'm not sure, but I would like to hear your opinion if you think otherwise. Or other than what he's saying. The core issues here is the setup of the judicial system. Its power, its hashpa'ah, its influence, and it's setting the tone of what you later see afterwards, in other areas of parliament, right?
100%.
You're there with that.
For sure. It's more powerful than any member of Knesset, than any minister and prime minister. They call the shots.
Right.
At the end of the day, any rule law that can be established by Knesset can be struck down overnight, and that's it.
Correct. Now, just to explain how... Sorry?
No, they call the shots.
They call the shots. Now, you have to understand that the president of the Supreme Court for years. Okay? It's such Rahmanis. This guy, he was a Nitzol Shoah, he's a Holocaust survivor. He didn't know in an interview how to complete the sentence Shema Yisrael, the pasuk Shema Yisrael. He's the head of the Supreme Court in Israel. What is that? You understand? We're talking about a tikkun Medina, the fixing of what's going on over here. He's adamant, Rav Ginsburg is adamant, is that Marechet HaMishpat, the judicial system here, that's really where a lot of things, not a lot of things, he says it's all dependent on making sure that structure is restructured, because without that, he's going to say in the next paragraph, what becomes impossible, really. Yeah, Steve.
I just, personally, again, I think I'm aligned with you and with most people in this room, that we have to be very careful. What Rav Ginsburg is talking about, is, as I understand it, is not the judicial reform that was introduced a couple of years ago.
Oh, no. I don't think anyone understood it like that.
The Supreme Court and return it to the
No.
Because there's a tikkun of the Knesset that needs to be done on the same principles. In other words, basis Torani and not basis Ottoman rule
Right.
or British rule.
No, I think everyone understood. I think. I wasn't speaking about like.
No, you weren't. But
Right. No, it's good. You're sharpening it. It's fine.
Terminology resonates with
Because of recent. Yeah. You're right.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
are
100%.
you including in this, I guess what I would call the unseen court, which would be the massive bureaucracy in which like bureaucrats make judgments, right? And there isn't even a trial. They just make decisions, and even the Knesset members can't do anything about that. Is that like a deeper thing he's getting to, or?
I mean that's part of it.
Yeah.
100%. That's part of the whole mess. Yosef, your hand was up.
Yeah, so I think when we were learning Tifer, like there was, towards the end of one of the shiurim, there was a bombshell of saying that we can't be miyuchad, the chesed
And the Gvura.
until we get rid of whoever doesn't belong here. In order to
Right.
be,
Right?
and that goes back to this.
Yes.
We're not going to be able to do that until
Yes.
this is rectified.
Yeah.
Huh?
Right.
Yes, he said that. Very good. I remember your face when you were like. Now, last paragraph for the day. Ha'ikuv ba'aliyat Yehudim novea, the fact that it's taking so much time, the delay of Yidden coming home, comes from b'muda or shla muda, consciously or subconsciously, mislida mesuyemet me'hanaga achilonit. This is very important. You know what slida means in Hebrew? Lislod means to, what's that?
Not wanting something.
Right, אני סולד מזה. יד סולדת בו. No? Yeshiva Shabbat. Yad soledet bו. How do you say that?
Retract.
It's like to
away.
pull away. To veer off, yeah. Because we're veering off from a certain level of what he calls Hanaga Chilonit, which means non-Torah leadership. הלב היהודי אינו מצליח לזהות במוסדות המדינה את תפארת ישראל ואת שלמות התורה אליה הוא מייחל בסתר. This is so beautiful, and it's also devastatingly heartbreaking. He's saying the Jewish heart can't identify itself in the institutions of the state. They can't identify the glory, the tiferet, the beauty of Israel, and the shlemus of the Torah, the commission of the Torah that every Jewish heart longs for deep down inside, whether they're aware of it or not. This is very important. You know, we believe every single Yidden has a neshama, has a soul. They have something in them that whether you're attached to it or not, it's there. It's there. The inner core of what makes us who we are, our Yiddish neshama, can't identify that which it longs for with what they see in front of them, in the way many of the institutions here are set up. That's, he says, is one of the real causes for a lot of like inner chaos and conflict that we can't even understand. Do you understand what he's saying?
Yeah.
Can you relate?
Yeah.
Insanely. I mean, profoundly. And then you have the guy that's living in a country where he has no expectation of that to be because it's not a Jewish state. So he doesn't have that issue and that tension. And his Torah and his Yiddishkeit and his Shabbos and his Kashrut and his Chinuch for his children is all on. And he's saying to you, what do you want from me? How are you going to get me to leave this setup to go to a place that is supposed to be something completely different on the level of Hanhaga, on the level of leadership and the way the place is set? How are you going to... You understand?
But it's not.
Chakeh.
No, I'm saying it's not where, we've discussed this, it's not where we want it to be, where we can portray what it is to them to want to come.
100%. But I want us to really hear that cry of the Yid that had his Yiddishkeit in a very kovedic and holy way set up and looks, and he has no expectation of his local surrounding and his local governance to be Jewish, to be Toradic, to be halachic. He has no expectation of
He
that.
can't control that either.
Right.
He knows what should be here.
Right.
You and I know what it should be here. We're just, we're giving all the excuses in the world for why it's taking time and we're on our way, v'chulei. But he's saying, but I don't have that, burning desire to have to work on my eyes in that way. I'm not that strong. And I have to stay. Remember, I think I shared with you guys one time. You ever knock on the door of the house that you grew up in? Did you ever do it? Yeah, he hates this story. He mamish won't stay in the room. He hates this story, and I understand it. That's why I love him so much. He's one of the, whatever. That was not staged, then you have to understand. That's real. He can't stomach what I'm going to tell you right now. I knocked on the door of the house that I grew up in Los Angeles one year. I left there when I was 9, this house. And a few years back on a trip to LA, it was already Shabbos, and it was Friday, so it was already Shabbos here. I couldn't call my wife and kids. Feeling very, very lonely, homesick, and said I had to do my thing there. So what do you do on a Friday? What do you do at those hours on a Friday? So I was like, I'm gonna get nostalgic. I'm gonna go to my house that I grew up in. I'm gonna see. So I pulled up, and we're not done yet. Okay, I pulled up. I see this mezuzah. Think about. Knock on the door, and this beautiful, beautiful looking Yid opens the door. Beard, pictures of all the Gdolim in America in the last like 60 years, and my house that I grew up in. In my bedroom there was posters of Kareem and Magic, and there was Sfarim everywhere in the house. Everywhere there was Sfarim. It was unbelievable. I'm looking around, and he's like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "I know this is weird, but do you mind? I grew up in this house." He said, yeah, "Sure." He was on the phone. He got off the phone, and then he said, he asked me, "Where are you from?" I said, "Wow, there's so many. I can't believe this home." So he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Eretz Yisrael." He's like, "Oh, Eretz Yisrael. I haven't been there yet." He was in the 60s. That's why he left the room, because it's very, very, very deeply.
Trouble, sadness, bothersome.
So fill in the blanks. Fill in the blanks. So.
Well, I just want to say one thing about
There's
that.
so much to say about this.
Yeah.
I don't want to. This is not. I want to explain a few things before anyone says anything. My judging of that person will not bring him or me closer to what we're supposed to be. But it is supposed to make me cry over the Galus Hashchina. It is supposed to make me cry over the fact that we're still in exile. It's supposed to awaken within me a love that I never had before. The problem is that when I'm operating off of modern Zionism, what am I dealing with that person? Golistic Jew. God, he doesn't get it. My God, what a mockery of the Torah. And that is a big tikkun that's needed in the Zionist movement, especially the religious Zionist movement. I can go on and on with examples of this parsha. It took me a long time to realize that be'emet, that was an opportunity for me to open my heart with love like never before, because nothing else will help in that situation at all. Coming back here and telling you stories about, can you believe there's Jews like this? Ain't bringing that guy a step closer to where he knows in his deepest depths of his heart he belongs, and when I know as well. And it doesn't make me feel any more connected to living here. That's the nachash. It's snake stuff. And that's what turned many of us off of the way that the Zionism we were raised with. And we had to redefine it and rediscover it on our own, which is happening in this door, happening in this generation. There's a lot to unpack with what we're saying right now. But Rav Ginsburg's saying the Yiddish neshama in his heart is longing for something that he knows he can't identify yet when he looks at the structure of the state today. It doesn't mean there shouldn't have been a state. God forbid. It doesn't mean we should have never tried. It just means that we still haven't gotten to where we need to get to. That's what it means. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay? Okay, third line. En במדינה ייחוד יהודי המפתה ומושך להעדיפו על פני מדינות אחרות. For this type of Jew, there's nothing in the state, nothing yichudi, nothing unique that seduces the Jew to come to this country as opposed to another country. Uleidach, maybe even on the contrary. התדמית שמציגה מדינה כמדינת היהודים, the imagery that this country portrays as the state of the Jews, גורמת לדחייה מפני יהדות שכזו, causes a דחייה, a rejection, because basically a real Yid is saying, if this is the way you're saying the Jewish state looks like, it's almost like don't call it a Jewish state, just call it a state where where Jews live. It's a big difference between the two. When you're calling something a Jewish state, that's achraya, that's responsibility. That's real responsibility. אם בראשית ימי המדינה נדמה היה כי יש כאן קידוש שם שמיים, if it seemed in the beginning of the country that there's a kiddush shem shamayim, the sanctification of God's name, בכך שסוף כל סוף אחרי כ-2000 שנות גלות, עם ישראל מנהיג מדינה משלו, because hey, סוף כל סוף, after all these years, 2,000 years of galus, עם Yisrael is leading its own state. התברר אט כי אדרבה חילול Hashem יש כאן. We've seen more and more that there's a חילול Hashem here. There is. בשל תדמיתה של מדינה זו, because of the way it portrays itself as a Jewish state, and yet some of the elements, the last thing you would call it, are Jewish. שצביונה אינו ראוי לאף יהודי כפרט, its character is not suitable for any Jew on an individual level, וכל שכן שאינו מתאים לכלל ישראל, and it also has nothing to do with the way the Klal Yisrael acts itself. Obviously, what is he speaking about? And the Rebbe was screaming about this. You don't come and conquer Eretz Yisrael in 1948. You don't have thousands of Jews, of Chayalim's blood being spilled in order to figure out a way to give up pieces of the land. That's a Chilul Hashem. That's a desecration of God's name. That's just on that level of land stuff. But all the other stuff, we could start, we'll be until no tomorrow, but this gives fuel to the Chaver that are saying, you see, why should I come here? Why should I come here? And I personally went through this a few months ago, where someone really ripped into me, because he said, Shlomo, I know, I've seen your Chaver, they're flying with you on Shabbos, Chassidus, you're learning, but I saw some events they go to in Eretz Yisrael. Everything goes. It's like everything goes, right? And it really made me feel like I'm failing, big time. I had to really snap myself out of a deep depression because it was literally the beginning of this year, and I got into such a dark place over it, and I had to. I'm still, working through it. And I can go to it more offline or in private if you want, but because we're either here and we're doing it full on, or we're not. Or we're not. I'll try to explain it. I'll try to expand on this in a second. He's saying the character of certain elements of what we see here is not suitable for a Jew the way he is privately, and it's definitely not suitable for the way a Jew is collectively as a klal. That's clear to anybody. I'm not speaking about non-religious Jews. Do you understand? I'm speaking about those that are under the impression that their game is on. רק כאשר התורה תקבע את צביונה של המדינה. Only when the Torah itself determines the character, the form, the shape of the country, היא תעשה ראויה לשם מדינת היהודים. Then, and only then, it'll be suitable to be called the Medina, the Jewish state. שינוי זה ייצור באופן מיידי משיכה חזקה וחפץ עז בקרב יהודי העולם כולו לעלות לארץ שהיא. Only this type of change will create immediately a strong drawing, a magnetism, and a strong desire in the hearts of the Jews of the world לעלות לארץ שהיא עבור עם ישראל גן עדן עלי אדמות. To come and make Aliyah to a land which for Am Yisrael is Gan Eden in this world. It's beautiful, no? Beautiful. Okay, now I'm going to tell you what I wanted to